Hi everybody, I'm Myra Baumgartner and I represent Silicones Incorporated, and I want to thank Fox and Superfine for having me here today. Today we're going to talk about mold making with one of Silicones Incorporated brush-on silicone rubbers. Hopefully I'm going to do this well enough for you to understand, but please feel free to reach out to Fox and Superfine if you have any questions. Everything I'm using today is going to be available to you through Fox and Superfine. Reach out to them to get further information on pricing and product availability and getting some material shipped to you. I'm going to be molding this bunny, and what we want to do first when we're molding anything is we want to find the center of the board. So I'm just going to eyeball this. It's not that big a deal, and I'm going to put an X. X marks the spot. Now when we're deciding about what kind of mold to make, a lot of people would recommend to you that even flat back things such as this should be brushed on or could be brushed on. I disagree. I think the best mold for something like this would be a poured mold, where you would lie this part down, you'd create a surround, you can use clay, you could use a piece of a cardboard box, glue it down, mix up your silicone and pour it. You're going to get a lot better mold. As you'll notice, the detail on this is very fine. You're always going to get better reproduction of a finely detailed part by pouring the silicone. So that's just a kind of a little bit of a disclaimer for some things I've seen and heard. I wouldn't brush a flat back on ever. So we'll put this up for now. We're not going to mold that today. We're going to mold this bunny. The first thing we need to do after we get the center is we want to glue our part down. Why do you want to glue it down? Well, I've been with silicones for 38 years next month, and I've made a few molds. I'm not a really good mold maker. I'm actually a chemist. But to learn how you guys work and need to work, I've tried to build things. And I've had things float. I had a huge piece float one time, and I couldn't believe it. Why did it float? I didn't secure it down well. So I like to use glue. I trust a glue better than anything else. I like to use the glue gun, because typically on a glue gun, I can peel it off my master, so I don't really damage my master. So I'm gonna put this here and we're gonna hold it for a few seconds. And after we do this, we're going to put a clay snake around this ridge to make sure that the silicone doesn't seep up under the clay. I think that's really important if you want a really nice, clean mold. I better turn this off or glue will go everywhere. If you really want a nice clean mold for where you're gonna pour your material to cast your part in, you don't want this on there. It's more cleanup for you in the end. Anything you don't take care of in the beginning is more cleanup for you in the end. So I've already pre-made my clay snake. This is just a clean clay available to you from Fox and Superfine. And we're literally just going to put this in here like this, all the way around our bunny. And we are going to take a dental tool. Again, Fox and Superfine has a full line of all kinds of these tools. This is my personal favorite because I'm not trying to sculpt, thank goodness. I can't sculpt, I'm terrible. But I can clean up my clay, and this can be a little tedious. So I'm gonna get this done and take a little break, and we'll be back to put our print coat on. Hi, so we're back. I'm happy with claying my bunny down there, really keep any silicone from flowing under my bunny. Now we are going to release our bunny so the silicone doesn't stick to it. It's really important to use a release, especially if you're not sure what your original is made out of. If you've sculpted it out of clay, you're safe probably to not use any sort of release. But if using wood or ceramic or a plaster, anything like that, you really want to get in a habit of using a release. Silicones Inc. makes a release called MR15. It's in liquid form because it costs a fortune to get this stuff aerosoled. And what you're basically paying for is the product being sent to you in a spray can. You don't really need it. You can use it in a liquid form. It's pretty easy to do. Fox and Superfine carries MR15. I'll even give you the formula because we don't really care if you make your own. It's 85 parts naphtha, which is a solvent, and 15 parts Vaseline. If you are going to try to make your own, I recommend that you get real Vaseline, not an off-brand. It's purer, and I have seen the off-brands actually not work as well. It is a little difficult to get the Vaseline in suspension that is mixed well into the naphtha. So you're going to find it a whole lot easier just to buy it. It's not that expensive and it works great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my little handy dandy brush here, and I'm just going to coat my bunny with MR15, and I'm also going to coat the board in about a brush width around my bunny. Why am I doing that? Because when I make my silicone mold, some of my print coat is actually going to flow out this far, and I don't want it to stick to my board. It makes it a whole lot harder to demold. So I want to make sure that I just get Mr. 15, as we fondly call him at the plant, all over the bunny. And if you have a piece like the one I showed you earlier with the detail on it, what you can do, you definitely want to put a mold release on something like this, but what you can do after you get the mold release on the piece is you can hit it with some compressed air. Because if you'll notice all this detail in here, the Vaseline will actually pool in these areas, and you don't want your detail lost because you had a buildup of Vaseline. That's why a lot of people like to use the aerosol, but it's not necessary. You can take the master after you've applied the MR15, and you can actually hit it with some compressed air, or even a high-powered hair dryer directly on the piece. It'll blow it out of the way, and you won't have any buildup. For this piece, because we really don't have any detail where the MR15 could pull, we're not going to hit it with any air. We're just going to let it flash or dry for about 15 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to be ready to do our print coat. So we're going to take a break while this dries, and we'll be back. Hi, we're back. Now we're going to do our print coat or our beauty coat. The purpose of this coat of silicone is it gets all the detail in our object. It's not thickened, it's the low viscosity or the runny form, and we don't use very much, just a little bit. We're gonna weigh out 100 grams of base. For this beauty coat, we're gonna use GI 1120. We're gonna tear our scale, and you're probably thinking, Myra, some people say you don't have to measure your silicone out by weight. I will tell you that as a chemist, you probably should. You're going to get a more consistent reaction. You're going to be able to predict what your product will do. You're going to take more caution with the most expensive part of your mold making material, which is the silicone. You can get a kitchen scale for 20 bucks or less on Amazon. They work great for small volumes. You can even get a larger scale for larger volumes. I encourage everyone to use a scale. After you've done this for a while, you can eyeball it. I will tell you that 10 cured silicones, which is what these are very forgiving on the percentages of catalyst that you use. So with Silicones Inc's formulations, we have about a 2% plus or minus range in which the materials will still work very much so like a 10-to-1 system does. I have 100 grams of base in here. I'm going to use 10% activator, the 179A. So that means I'm going to use 10 grams of activator. So I'm going to pour some in here, and my scale is going to kick in just a second, and it did. So I also want this to kick off a little faster so I can get my mold built in one day or less, probably in a few hours. So I'm going to use a little bit of our ultra fast catalyst. This is a quick curing catalyst. You can use it in conjunction with another catalyst, or you can use it by itself. We have data sheets on it that tell you how much you can use in some of our materials. I'm going to go with about 2% ultra fast on top of the 179A. That way, my beauty coat or my print coat is going to be ready faster so that I can go ahead and do the base of my mold, the big part of my mold. So I put in about 2% or 2 grams of Ultra Fast. And now we're going to mix it until we have a uniform blue color. Silicones Inc. pigments our activators simply to help you see that it's mixed. It does nothing to the reaction. All of our products are available to you colorless. The bases, however, aren't always offered translucent or transparent, but the activators, if you don't like the color or you would like to do your own coloring, knock yourself out. You can. So we're going to mix this to a nice uniform teal color. The 179A is a catalyst that we manufactured for extended library life. What is library life, you ask me? Library life is the life of the mold as it sets, not being used. Which means if you make a mold of this bunny and you'd like it to last for a really long time, years, you'd want to substitute a standard catalyst with something like 179A. We did extensive library life tests for a very large amusement park who had made a very large cave mold out of another manufacturer's silicone. 2 or 3 years past making the mold, they went to get the mold and make another cave door. The mold crumbled in their hands. So we did a library life evaluation and we formulated a silicone that would address that issue. And 2020 is one, but 179 is my personal favorite. We're going to de-air this because we want a beauty coat with no air pockets. So we've already done that, and I have one right here. So we put it in a de-aeration chamber. We pulled a vacuum on it, 28 to 30 inches of mercury. It rises, it falls. It should take no longer than about 3 minutes, and then you're ready to go. So all I'm gonna do is kind of let gravity do my work here. I am gonna be doing some stippling in a minute, but I do not want any air. I don't want any brushes. Again, this is my beauty coat. This is my print coat. I need it to be clean of anything that could show up in my part. So I'm going to gently stipple down here and kind of help it along. Again, we used a little Ultra Fast. So I'd say you probably have about 15 minutes to get this beauty coat applied before the rubber is going to start getting thick on you. We call that work time. Work time is the amount of time you have to work with the silicone. We measure that in our lab by chemists, our lab QC team, literally standing there and pulling the stick up and down in the rubber until it doesn't flow anymore. We want it to work for you so that you can use it. I'm gonna get my beauty coat stippled on. You'll see I've got some air already forming, and we're gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna pop them here in a minute. I'm gonna try not to be too messy. You can do a beauty coat out of any silicone you want as long as it's in the same family of chemistry. There's tin cureds and platinum cureds. You don't want to use a tin cured beauty coat and then go to a platinum cured backup because it won't work. The platinum will be inhibited, that is, it won't cure where it touched the tin. So try to stay in the same family. I'll also tell you with a platinum silicone, they have their advantages and they have their disadvantages. One of the disadvantages is the inhibition problems. Another disadvantage is platinum silicones complete their reaction much faster. What does that mean? That means if you do a beauty coat out of a platinum, you really better go do that second coat as soon as that silicone is tack free, which we're going to talk about here in a second. If not, that second coat may not adhere to your first, and you'll have a mold that won't work. So I'm pretty happy with the amount of silicone I've got on here. And now I want to go back, turn him around. I'm going to pop some of these bubbles. But what I want to do is I want to make sure I'm covered everywhere. So Ashley, if you see any spots where I didn't get any silicone, let me know. And you don't really have to have much. You'll notice you're probably thinking, gosh, Myra, that's so thin. It's fine. Again, this is our beauty coat. We're going to put another layer of silicone behind it. It's fine that it's thin. And I really don't care if any air is down here on the platform. That's not going to bother me. The only thing that's going to bother me is any air on the bunny himself. So get all that out. Some people use a toothpick to pop these. Some people just blow and they pop. You will find a way to do it that you enjoy the best. So I think I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, look, I have this brush. Granted, this brush costs 97 cents. But you know what? Some of your brushes cost $3.97. So Silicones Inc. has a product called SI 479, which is also available at Fox and Superfine. It's a silicone solvent. Essentially, it is a low molecular weight, that means little teeny tiny polymer, silicone that evaporates. And it's really great to have on hand because you can do so much with it. You can thin the silicone down if it's too thick. Let's say you're trying to pour that detail part and you think, gosh, I need something just a little bit thinner. You can add 5 to 10% of this to the base. Mix that in really well. This is really runny. Then catalyze and you have a lower viscosity overall material, which is really nice. And the good thing about this, instead of a regular old thinner, is it evaporates. So it doesn't do anything to your mold. It doesn't make it weaker. It doesn't make it softer. It evaporates. And if you stay 10% or less, it also doesn't shrink anymore. That's one aspect or one use of this. The other use is this brush. You can clean it. So you notice while I was talking, I took the majority out. Now I'm gonna stipple this down in here. You see all the silicone coming out of it. This is not hazardous. It is flammable. It is like I said, it's a low molecular weight silicone solvent. It's a lot more friendlier to use in your shop as opposed to naphtha, heptane, toluene, and honestly, it cuts the silicone, in my opinion, better than isopropyl alcohol. Fox and Superfine carries this material. It's really not that expensive. And when you're ready for it to go away, just leave it out and let it evaporate. So now I have salvaged my brush. Again, this doesn't really matter for these cheap brushes, but it does when your brushes are more expensive. One little thing I do in the lab as well, you'll notice I wrote on this brush MR15. So this is the brush I use to put the mold release on. I don't want to use this brush when I do any work with silicone. Why? Anywhere this MR15 touches the silicone, it could inhibit or stop the ability for the silicone to stick to itself as it's curing. This brush, I'm going to put 1120 on, which means I use it for the GI 1120 base. It doesn't matter that it's washed in this. Again, this evaporates and does nothing. So we're going to take another break and get ready, let this go to tack free, and then we're going to do our next layer. Hi, we're back. So we waited for our print coat, beauty coat, to become tack free. We want it to be tack free because when we apply the second coat of our thixotropic material, we don't want it to move the print or beauty coat around and cause any imperfections on our mold face. So this is tack free. Tack free is when you touch it and nothing comes back. So I have done one earlier that is more complete, and its tack-freeness. I guess I could show you that. This one's not really completely tack-free. There you go. That's what you don't want. What you want is essentially that. So I'm gonna go with the bunny that I have that is already cured up well, tack-free everywhere. As you'll notice, it's all clean. I went ahead and marked where I'm gonna cut my mold to remove the bunny so that once he's under rubber, I can remember where I felt like when I have a parting line, it'll be the easiest to clean up and maybe not see. One reason Fox and Superfine invited Silicones Inc. here today was to present our brush-on silicone. We've done things a little differently, as I mentioned in the very beginning. There's two different ways, there's probably more, but there's two primary ways right now the industry is offering you a brush-on silicone. One is using a chemical additive. It's called a thixotrope. Every manufacturer's thixotrope is essentially the same. It's a liquid material that you can add to the silicone after you've put the activator in. And you'll notice in just a few minutes, if not a few seconds, the silicone becomes thick, thixotropic. If you want to learn what that word means a really simple way, think of whipped cream. Whipped cream is very easy to move and it stays where you put it. That's a thixotrope. What we do with these flowable silicones is you add the liquid thixo additive anywhere from 0.1% up to 5%, and then you get this material that you can put where you want it and it doesn't move. The problem with the chemical thixotropes within Silicones Inc., they're called SI661, is they cause the silicone to rot faster, dry rot, lose their physical properties. It's not a good thing long-term for your mold. How we found out about that is I was in Oregon working with one of my foundry customers who had a huge silicone mold made out of one of our silicones. And the mold was made out of a material that really shouldn't dry rot. It should have a really long library life. Again, library life is the life of the cured silicone as it just sits on the shelf. And he was complaining to me, this mold was very, very expensive. And he took me over, hey Myra, look at this, what is this? I see these brush strokes in it. I said, what did you put in this? And he said, nothing. And I said, yeah, you did, because you can't brush it on like this. The paint marks will settle out, they'll level out. And he said, oh, I just used a little bit of this thixo additive I got from another supplier. And I thought, wow, that killed the rubber. It had to. I would go back to our factory in High Point. We talked to our team and we started doing research on these thixo additives, these chemical thixo additives. And I want to present to you data, and I know some of us don't like data, but I am a scientist and I love data. I just want to share with you some information. We're not demoing this product today, but this is one of our really good mold making products. It's a 10 cured, which is in this family. If you'll notice here, these are the physical properties without any thixo additive. And these are the thixo properties after we add the thixo additives. We've developed a testing method to see an accelerated aging process using heat. I want you to notice, if you can, the percent loss of tear strength, tensile strength, elongation. What is tear strength, Myra? That's the strength of the rubber when you make a little tear in it and you go to pull it. How easy or hard is it to pull and tear? Please notice, 75% loss because you've added a thixo additive. We'll also show you a P90. P90 is a platinum cured silicone, and it is a silicone that my customer was using out west. I want you to look at the loss of physical properties there. And then lastly, if any of you are also doing animatronics, we tested one of our biggest sellers for the skins, for animatronic skins, GI 587. Some of my animatronic customers love to use a thixo additive in their silicone for animatronic work laying up skins, please note the loss of physical properties there. And for the record, tensile strength is how much force it takes to pull the silicone apart without a tear being propagated. Elongation is very obvious. It's the percent it stretches on itself. So that brings me to why Silicones Inc. developed these pre-thickened thixotropic materials. We do not utilize the chemical that caused that. We use a different method. It comes to you pre-thickened, which also is nice. You don't have to do anything else. And without catalyst, notice how easy. I'm not really applying that much pressure. The other thing about the Thixo additive versions, most of the time, you have to chase it. What do I mean by that? You're putting on a painted on layer and you're having to keep up with it. You're having to trowel it. You're gonna have to continually move it until it stops moving or the work time goes. That's really not helping you. You also can have layers of your mold where gravity is pulling the rubber down that are thicker than layers that are thinner on top. This doesn't do that. Lastly, when you do the Thixo additive, you may have to have consecutive layers. So you'll have to do a layer. You'll have to let it become tack-free. You have to come back and do another layer. I'm not really sure how many layers that you'll have to do to get the thickness you want. Once you get perfected at using this material, you only have to do it one time. So let's go ahead and mix some up. I'm gonna weigh it again because this we don't de-air. It's kind of silly to de-air it. It's so thick, you're never gonna get it de-aired, so why de-air it? So I've estimated that I need about 330 grams of my GI 739, and we make about 5 versions of this. We make one that utilizes our GI 1000 base, making the end mold about a 30 Shore A. This is formulated from the 1120 base, which makes it about a 20 Shore A. I have one that utilizes GI 1110 base, which makes it about a 10 Shore A. I have 3 that go with our animatronic materials, so that when you need to do seaming, patching, anything of that nature, you have a pre-thickened version that your team can have to seam their skins. We also do one for P90. One of my competitors has a very popular brush-on platinum silicone for mold making that utilizes Thixo additive. You can always tell if it's utilized because it doesn't come to you pre-thickened. It's runny, it's liquidy, but then you mix them together and all of a sudden it's thixotropic. That means they've used the chemical. We saw a moment ago how bad the platinums react to thixotropes. P90 is a great substitute. Again, it's easy to move, it's easy to work with, and you're gonna see how really easy it is to make a mold with this. So I have 330 grams of base. I'm gonna put in 33, right, 10-to-1 grams of activator. And you don't wanna get any release on your barrier or your print or beauty coat. And I'm sure you know why. If you get release on there, you're not gonna get good adhesion between your layers. And when you get your mold done, you're really gonna want to have good adhesion. I'm gonna mix this up. Bet you guys are wondering about my t-shirt, right? You wanna be my friend? Well, my boss, who founded this company, who is no longer with us, Don Griffin, he actually used to tell customers that all the time. He used to say this: we only sell to our friends. And Silicones Inc. has a reputation of becoming very close with all their customers. We want you to be happy. We want you to be successful. We want you to enjoy talking to our chemists, our distributors, like the great team at Fox and Superfine. So we're a small family-owned business. We're US based. We're in High Point, North Carolina. We do not buy raw material from China, and it's not because we don't like China. probably most of the clothes I have on was made in China. The problem with Chinese-based raw material is it's not the quality that we expect and need to produce consistent quality materials. When you work with Silicones Inc., I think you're gonna find that when you open our material, it's gonna be exactly the same every time. We QC every drop of material that goes out our door. And if you have a problem with it, we don't argue with you about it. We don't fight with you about it. We typically replace it on demand. And we're just very proud of our customer service and the loyalty that we have to our distributors, giving them the service they need to service you. So I'm all mixed. No streaks, I hope. So now I'm going to start applying this to my bunny. Remember, don't want to use this brush. I think I'm gonna use this brush. I'll probably change my mind in the midst of doing this, but I'm gonna start brushing it on him. And this one, because the beauty coat's there and you see it's not moving, so I can really push, make sure I don't get any air entrapment, really push it down in there. And I want you to notice, is it moving? No, it's not. This is what is so great about this material. It is so easy to work with it. Check out some other videos where people are using the Thixo additives and watch how it's done. Some of them might work better than ours, than others. We have a couple products that the Thixo additives work a whole lot better in than others. But still, if you want a mold, you've put this much work into it, you want a mold that will last, this should be a no-brainer. We're just gonna get this on here. And I'm sure some of you watching this going, now why isn't she doing that way? You guys, I'm not a professional mold maker. I am a chemist. I'm celebrating my 38th year with Silicones next month. I have done stuff in the lab like this just to try to help develop better products for you guys. But as far as my technique being the best, it's probably not. I probably could learn a lot from you guys, and I'm more than happy to be criticized and be told that there's a better way to do this. But I will tell you that my clients that we have converted either through direct sales or distribution love this stuff. I had one client who I cannot name, he who cannot be named, said it spreads like whipped cream. Well, I told him he was exaggerating because it doesn't spread that easily. But if you'll notice, it spreads pretty easily. And also, if you tried to build a 2-part mold for a piece like this, you know, would it be a better mold? Some say yes, some say no. I think it depends on how good you are at doing this, but it definitely would be a lot more labor intensive. I think you should put the energy into building your mother mold after you get this done and make that 2-part. But I can, as you can tell, I'm getting this on as thick as I want, so I'm only gonna have to do 1 layer if I do it right. And then this silicone, you can cast plaster, you can cast epoxy, you can cast wax. The foundry industry does a lot of brush on molding for lost wax process. You can cast polyurethane, you can cast acrylic, you can cast anything you want in this. And a lot of your casting materials Fox and Superfine has, and they would be more than happy to help you pick out what's best for what you want in the end. And I didn't use any ultra fast in this because I want this mold to be, I want to take my time. I want to get it on the thickness that I want. I want to make sure that I've stippled in areas where I could trap air. And I don't want it to set up on me really fast and I lose the ability to work with it. So when we make this one, it will have to set till the morning, and then you can cut it off. You can use a little ultra fast in there if you're in a really big hurry. If you do that, I would just recommend that you are ready to go so you don't want to run out of work time. Remember, the silicone is the most expensive part of this, besides your original that you spend a lot of time making. Some clay originals, as you guys all know, they don't come out, they break when they come out. I saw a brush bristle. I was gonna grab it, but I guess I buried it. So I opted to skip the ultra fast, but you could use ultra fast, 1-2%. So I'm feeling like this is probably pretty good. I'm really making sure the nose here, there it is. I'm really making sure that the nose is covered and the ears are well coated. Some people like to smooth out their surface, which is easy to do, and I can show you one way to do that with some of the 479 here in a sec. Let's get all this on there. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really needed this. I'm not saving this brush, it's going in the trash, but some of you are probably a lot better and can salvage your brush. And you are get a little pull, but when I'm using this stuff, I notice the pull, it's not much. It's more of a pull than a gravity kind of drag. It's almost like a rubber band, right? The polymer is kind of pulling itself. Let's get there a little bit left, and then I'll show you if you want to smooth it out. And you have more patience than I do, you can. Like I said, I know some customers that really like to have their brush on really clean and smooth. So I'm going to take a new brush in some of my 479. Remember, this is the silicone solvent. And you can literally clean this up. And I'm going to turn this around, Ashley, in just a second and show you how you can, and you're not hurting the rubber. This is going to evaporate. So if you'll notice, it's getting smoother. And again, this isn't going to hurt your silicone. It's going to go away. So you can do that if you'd like a cleaner surface to build a mother mold on. So this is another use for 479. I personally believe all shops should have 479 in them. I think that you're going to find a lot of uses for it. I've shown you 3 now, and there are probably some. Oh, I know one too. If you do, any of you do animatronic skins and you paint them later, it's what you clean the skin with before you go and start applying extrinsic painting. It cleans that skin up so well, and it does not hurt the silicone. So, see, that's using the 479 to clean it up versus not. So, we're going to come back with a cured bunny I've already demolded. Okay, so we're back, and we went ahead and demolded. So I cut these off at a place where I marked on my board that would be the best for me to, if I had a seam line in it. And then I actually peeled it away. This mold is a little bit thicker than this one, so I had to make a little bit deeper cut line. And you're gonna notice some air entrapment in the brush on portion. That's inevitable, you're not gonna get away from that. But you'll notice there isn't any air entrapment in the print coat. i.e. the reason you do a beauty coat, so you have no air. What you're gonna wanna do now is you're gonna want to put this in a mother mold. And Fox and Superfine are gonna have a demo on that soon, but they have a couple products that are great for this. The BJB BR75 or the ArtCast brushable resin. It'll be a great mother mold. Why do you need a mother mold? You need a mother mold because you want something to hold your mold, hold the seam line together, and hold your mold while you're pouring your material into it. The weight of the material could pull it, cause the seam line to open, so you want a mother mold. Some people would use a rubber band to hold it together. If the mold is thick enough, you can do that and then use some sort of device to hold it, like a tube, and have some weight under it, but you've got to make sure that your seam line is gonna stay together. That is it for me. Thank you guys for listening to my very first video on mold making. It's been a pleasure being with you today, and it's been a pleasure to be here at Fox and Superfine. Have a good one. Thanks.